we're going to start off by generating some data in Max. So with this example, this is kind of some arbitrary data that we're going to generate. So I'm just going to set up a metronome, and that's going to count or trigger values to count on a counter. So just set that going. So we're going to use this as our data. Now in reality that data would be more meaningful, so that would be coming from a sensor or perhaps another control source. For example, if you were using Touch OSC or something, then you could send that data in. But as I say, it could be from a sensor, it could be from motion detection that's been input from Icon or a similar other system. It could be a physical sensor, etc. Or it could be a kind of data source that you generate within, for example, Max, so some sort of system that you build there, whether it's kind of musical data or data of other sorts. But anyway, just by way of a demonstration, we're going to treat this as our data here, so I'll just label that. So in our scenario, we want to take this data and we might be using it in Max. So for example, we might be generating a tone over here with it, but we might also then want to send that into Isadora, as an example, to do something else. So for example, to control a visual. So how we could do that? Well, the kind of most comprehensive way of being able to send this kind of data, particularly if it's non-MIDI, i.e. non-musical based data, is to use OSC. So in Max we use the UDP send object, and this will format the data in using the UDP protocol and send it out as OSC packets. Now there are two key bits of information that the UDP send object needs to know, and if you look at the help file, it shows you here. The first is the destination IP address. So if we were connecting this to a different computer, for example another computer that was sharing the same Wi-Fi, then we would have to go into System Preferences, which I've got up here, and you would then go to your Wi-Fi tab and you would look at the IP address that has. So you would find this out on the other computer that you're sending to, and then you would put that in here. So it might look something like this. And what that is doing is it's giving information to the UDP send object, and it's telling it what the IP address, i.e. what the address of the other computer is that you're sending to. So essentially that's telling your computer where the other computer is located on the network. Very importantly, you must be connected to the same network. So that's how we would do that. However, if we're sending data within the same system as we are here, because we're on the same computer which has its place on the network, but we're essentially running two different bits of software within the same computer, then we would use the localhost address, which by default is 127.0.0.1. So for this demonstration we're going to use localhost IP address. And then the second bit of information is the port number which we send to. So the port number is a more specific address, or part of the address, in that this identifies the specific software or the specific location in which to which the data is going to be sent. So as default, Isadora uses the port number 1234. We can find this out if we go into Isadora preferences, and on MIDI net we can see here the Open Sound Control OSC port number is 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we didn't set that to 1, 2, 3, 4, then Isadora wouldn't receive the information, importantly. So we need to know what that port number is. We can, if we want, change it. So, and there's absolutely nothing, there's no difference between that. But what is important is that the port number here matches the port number here. So that is pretty much it for all we need to do to get the data kind of going out and into Isadora. So if I set that up there and then I come to Isadora and I go to Communications Stream Setup, if I select Auto Detect Input, then you can see here that that data is coming through. Okay, so this value here. So it's auto detecting that that data is coming in. However, because of how Isadora works, if I create a OSC listener, then you can see here that data is not being fed through into your actual patching environment. So here, the data is getting into Isadora, because we can see it here. Here's our value. However, it's not actually arriving into Isadora. And the reason for that is because Isadora uses or is looking for a specific OSC message type, and the syntax for that is /Isadora /1. So this prepares this data. So the prepend object will essentially create a message which begins with this and then presents the number after that, or the data, whatever it is. Now this is important, as I say, because Isadora is looking for the message to start with /Isadora / and then a number. That number there will link to whatever channel we're using in the OSC listener in Isadora. So to demonstrate this, I will now take my value and I'll send it through the prepend object. And just so that we can have a quick look at the message being constructed, if I can grab it, there we go. So that is the message that we're constructing by sending that value, that bit of data in through the prepend object. Make that a bit bigger. So it's now constructing the message /Isadora /1, and then it presents the value. If I come back to Isadora, go to Stream Setup, as we did before. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I need to connect this up here as well. Okay, and now we can see that the stream address there has a specific syntax to it. So it has this /Isadora /1, and we can still see the data here. This is important because now you also notice that in the OSC listener, channel 1, we can see the value now coming through. So we now have a functional system whereby we are generating data in Max here, and it's coming through here through the OSC listener in Isadora, and we can then hook this up, for example, to whatever parameter we like. Let's just set it to the intensity value here. Okay, so we're generating, or we're taking one bit of data and we're using it in Max, for example, to generate some audio, and then we're sending it into Isadora to do something else with there. If you had another bit of data that you wanted to send, then all you need to do is replicate this and then send it to a different channel in Isadora. So prepend and then /Isadora /2. If I come back over to Isadora, you can see that that data has stopped coming through here on channel 1. But if I then change that to channel 2, then you can see the data starts coming back through again. So this number here in this part of the message essentially designates what OSC channel you're going to receive it through on. And you can have multiple OSC listeners, each one carrying through a separate bit of information, a separate bit of data. For example, if you're generating a lot of data. So that's pretty much a tutorial over. The only other thing I'll show quickly is if you wanted to do it the other way around. So rather than using UDP send, you would use UDP receive in Max. And this is where you'd specify, we looked at setting the port number in Isadora before. This is where you would specify the port number that you want to use in Max. So let's say port 5000. So I'll just set some data going here in Isadora. So if I now want to send that out, then instead of using OSC listener, we're going to use OSC transmit. And we are going to output the value through the OSC transmit. Here we're going to set our port to 5000. If we were sending to a different computer with a different IP address, then we'd set this up here. But since again we're sending locally, then we'll leave that at localhost. Localhost is another way of, it's another term used for the 127.0.0.1 that we used before. So if we connect this all up, just a second. If we connect this up in Max, sorry, I'm just trying to resize things so that you can see it all. There we go. So now we can see this value that's generated here is now coming through into Max. We could again change the address there. So if we wanted to call this beans and mash, then this would here come through as beans and mash. Obviously you're going to use a more meaningful name than that. So it could be speed of the X value that you're measuring perhaps. So that would allow you to recognize the bit of data that comes through, because if you're sending multiple bits of data, then you need to know which one's which. So typical scenario, you could have X and Y both coming through, and then you would be receiving X and Y here in Max, and then the easiest way of sorting those out is to use the root object. So you'd send the raw data stream through the root object, and this would allow you to root out the different messages. So basically this is saying that anything that starts with /x speed will be sent down here, and anything that starts with /y speed is going to come down here. So that's what we've named our two addresses. And now we should receive just the values. So let's just use float to display those. Check that they're both going over here, and there we have it. So now we've got our two separate values, X speed, which is generated here, and Y speed, which is generated here, and we have X speed here and Y speed there. So that's kind of doing it in reverse. So that's OSC.